Hello and welcome to Political Capital, the intersection of money and politics. I'm Karabole Tata. We are here outside the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, where South Africa's courts have been playing a very big role over the last few weeks. We were here today covering the decision on former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe's leave to appeal the January judgment that found that he must pay back the money that he got from Eskom, plus controversy at Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's funeral, and Cyril Ramaphosa wants R1 trillion worth of foreign investment. Plus, is the Gupta house of cards finally falling? There's a lot more on the show, but first up, your newspapers.
The newspapers have been very busy this week. Gupta's elusive jet among assets seized, so says the Business Day. Bombardier jet with the tail number ZS Oak, a Bell helicopter and a Cessna Citation were among the items seized when the authorities raided the Gupta home in Saxonwold in Sandton. Also, Mercedes-Benzes and Land Rovers, a Porsche Cayenne and a Lamborghini Gallardo. The bank accounts of Gupta-linked companies and houses, businesses and farms across the country. These include the Gupta homes in Saxonwold, which were raided on Monday, as well as houses in Rochabai and Constantia in Cape Town and Umhlanga in Durban. You'll hear more about this story in a few minutes. Jacob Zuma to fight attempt to cut his legal funding, also says the Business Day. The DA has also asked the court to force Zuma to repay the estimated 32.4 million already spent on his legal campaign to avoid prosecution. If that order is granted, it could be financially devastating for the former president, who has already been ordered to personally pay the costs of his disastrous state capture cases. Also, going back to the Winnie funeral, which we'll hear more of in this programme, the ANC has moved to block some of its senior leaders from setting the record straight as the debate over the legacy of the late struggle icon Winnie Madikizela-Mandela threatened to spiral out of control. On Monday, ANC veteran and former Safety and Security Minister Sidney Mufamadi defended himself against allegations that he was part of a plot to neutralise and politically weaken Madikizela-Mandela. And finally, on a bit more of a hopeful note, Ramaphosa announces 1.2 trillion investment drive in Times Live. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced on Monday evening that South Africa would host a major investment conference in August or September 2018, which would aim to raise over 1 trillion rand in new investment over 5 years. He was speaking at OR Tambo International Airport before leaving for a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London. CNBC Africa cameras were there, and let's hear what the man himself had to say.
This becomes an era of investment. It becomes an era of injecting growth in our economy, and also a time when we address the issues that have been holding the country back in as far as economic growth is concerned, where we actively address some of the key problems. And right now, we are in a space where we believe that we are giving attention to those issues that have been putting the brakes on our economy, and we therefore can get on world stages with an ambitious plan of trying to attract investments of up to $100 billion. I think we are on the right course, and with the investment envoys that we've appointed, I believe with their knowledge, with their experience, with their networks, with their knowledge of our country and investments, we will be better positioned. And the reason for putting together a top team like this is to enable us to go out like a pack of hunting lions, where we have a pack of these lions going out to hunt down those investments for us. So we are unleashing this pack of lions, as they will be working also with Trudy Makaya, and indeed working together with various other departments within the state. We are going to be coordinating all this. Now, we're putting our eye on this investment conference that I spoke about in SONA, And let me say that a number of other countries do the same thing. They hold investment conferences and attract billions and billions of dollars. Now, we're not the first in class to do so. Maybe we are the first in class by having this really special pack of lions and one lioness going out to hunt down investments for our country. So my view is that this is a great moment for us. We're looking forward with a great deal of confidence. We're going out there to go and attract investments to come to our country and showcasing the country and getting the world to be once again enthusiastic about South Africa, to be interested in South Africa. And as we go around, we're finding that a number of people are interested in us now. When Minister Patel and I were in Davos, I don't know who else was there, Maria Ramos was there, we found that we just couldn't have a spare moment to talk to the various people who wanted to come to our country. One other interesting business person that I met at Davos was Jack Ma, who runs Alibaba. And I asked Jack Ma, I said, Jack Ma, when are you coming to South Africa? He said, I'll come anytime. I said, come in August. Because when he comes here, I want to say to Jack Ma, my friend, I want you to start ordering some of the things that you sell on your major online platform of Alibaba from South Africa. And then we begin to build factories. We begin to make the products that our factories and our business people can sell on Alibaba. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm quite excited about this initiative today because a pack of investment lions are going to hunt down those investments that we so sorely need in our market. And I'd like you to wish them well as the lions go hunting.
It's the big news story of the day and a bad day in court for former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe, who came here to appeal an earlier judgment that found that his reinstatement at Eskom and the 11 million rand pension payout were unlawful. The court summarily dismissed his leave to appeal, leaving him with no job, no 11 million rand pension payout, and also has to foot the bill for the sitting.
Well, the option is to petition to get leave. Alternatively, if that fails, is to approach the Supreme Court of Appeal. Those are the options.
Following this damning judgment and the High Court's refusal to give you that leave to appeal, doesn't that make your client and the case rather difficult for you going into the Supreme Court?
Yes, it makes it, it definitely makes it more difficult, but in my 40 years experience, we've appealed and petitioned and appealed and have been successful. So there's no hard and fast rule.
So the monies that is being asked for Mr. Molefe to return to employer have been a subject of contestation from the 30 million rand total pension payout to what the court has asked them to return, which is 11.
Misunderstanding. There's no 30 million rand payout ever. The figure was never even offered or written down or anything. I don't know where it came from. And a substantial amount of money in the return of the funds is Mr. Molefe's pension from his previous employees. So I can't quantify what's to be paid back and exactly when.
Obviously, the appeal that you had lodged in the High Court with regards to appealing the earlier judgment put the returns of those monies on hold. What happens to the return of those monies now
that we're going to deal with on an urgent basis, us being the legal team and Mr. Molefe.
But how does Mr. Molefe feel about returning the 11 million, the said 11 million?
Mr. Molefe will pay what he has to pay, but he's not going to pay money that he doesn't owe.
Does he believe he owes any money?
I can't answer that. I think the facts speak for themselves.
Trade union Solidarity, which represents some 7,000 Eskom employees, were also here, and they are baying for blood, and they want Brian Molefe to pay that money back within 24 hours. I spoke to the CEO, Dirk Herman.
We see this judgment thus as not only a victory for solidarity, we see it as a victory for taxpayers in South Africa. Everyone won here. A clear message is sent via the court to South Africans that we are sick and tired for tax abuse. And that is the victory, a much broader victory than only Brian Molefe.
According to Mr. Molefe's attorney, they will be exploring other legal avenues in which they can take the case forward. What do you make of his persistent argument that he is entitled to keep that pension payout?
He already misused court processes. We've seen it this morning. Immediately after the deliberations, the court made a judgment. And it was quite clear that the court said that there's no prospects of success. That confirms our stance. It's an abuse of court processes actually to protect his money that he received unlawfully. He wants to keep our money, the taxpayers' money. And now we want to continue with processes, and we say no, he will not be successful. He must pay back the money. Therefore, we've decided that if you look at this specific judgment, he must pay it back immediately, within 24 hours. If he doesn't pay back the money within 24 hours, because it's unlawful money, then we will continue with actions to show that he does not respect the court judgment, and that is criminal. If you look at criminal elements in this specific case, then you will see that the court confirmed this morning that it was unlawful. In the second place, it was to enrich Mr. Molefe to the detriment of taxpayers and also to Eskom. And that's the classical definition of fraud. And that is why Solidarity also laid criminal charges against Mr. Molefe. The Hawks already indicated that they will investigate, and this morning actually show that he has very little room now to maneuver.
So, with all due respect, it couldn't have been Mr. Molefe alone. He did not run Eskom single-handedly and therefore could have not awarded himself that massive pension payout. So who else do you think should be facing criminal charges, and does that include the former Minister of Public Enterprise?
The two people that act here in circus is Mr. Molefe and the previous chair, Mr. Ben Nkubane. Both of them were clearly involved in what we say prima facie fraudulent action, and therefore they must criminally be charged. And so no doubt that there's more people involved. Up to now, we could not find direct links to the previous minister, and therefore our criminal charges is against Mr. Molefe and Mr. Ben Nkubane.
What happens if 24 hours lapses and Mr. Molefe has not paid a cent? What does Solidarity do then?
If 24 hours lapsed and he did not pay a cent, we will immediately continue with criminal charges against him for contempt of court, and then he can be arrested immediately.
The other big story of the week was the raid on the infamous Gupta compound in Saxonwold, north of Johannesburg. The National Prosecuting Authority's Asset Forfeiture Unit has obtained a restraint order that allows them to preserve assets up to the value of 250 million rands. I went down there to have a look. And here in northern Johannesburg, the quiet and plush suburban residents of Saxonwold came to life once again as the Gupta brothers again came into the focus as South Africa tries to reclaim the narrative with regards to state capture. Now, the three Gupta brothers are very politically connected and were very close to former President Jacob Zuma. Today, there is yet again a raid on their compound to try and preserve assets to the tune of 250 150 million rands, money which is alleged to have been accessed to them illegally through the Vrede Dairy Farm projects. Now, the day did not go smoothly for all the agencies that were here. As I understand, there was a 15-minute delay as the Gupta lawyer refused entry to the 3 coordinated agencies and making a bit of a stand before eventually the gates were opened for the 3 agencies to go through. Now, what is inside are 3 properties that together with the 4th one make the compound of the Guptas, and there are 43 other properties that will be attached that span the length and breadth of South Africa. Also inside are reported to be 3 luxury vehicles, namely a Ferrari, a Porsche and a Jeep Cherokee. All those will form part of the preservation order, which is under the curatorship of Hendrik Hatting, who is now in charge of what happens here. Now, part of the story is that there are 13 respondents on the list that the NPA's asset forfeiture unit expects to go through. Namely, among them was the former CEO of Oak Bay, who is Nazim Hoa. Now, also as part of the story, there was a sighting of the Gupta plane, the Gupta jet ZS Oak, which landed during the weekend at Lanseria Airport, which is now under the curatorship of Mr. Harding and is part of the assets seized by the NPA. We understand that the story will still be continuing, that over the next 2 days we expect that the NPA will be coming to collect some of the assets that they have ascertained as part of that forfeiture unit. This is a developing story that will be long in the minds of South Africans as they look closely on the story as the apex of a corruption case in South Africa. Now, the Vrede Dairy Farm story may not be fresh to all of us, so let's take a look at some background.
The case revolves around a multi-million-dollar plan to get poor people to raise cows near Vrede Farm in the Free State. The idea was to pour millions into training poor people to raise cattle and earn a living from it. The Free State Agriculture Department transferred 220 million rand to the company supposed to be running the project, Estina, in partnership with Indian dairy company Paras. Very little of that money was spent on cows. Among the 8 people accused in Bloemfontein is Varun Gupta, a nephew of brothers Ajay, Atul and Rajesh Gupta. He is the former CEO of Oak Bay, the Gupta holding company.
We are off to a short ad break, but when we return, controversy at the Winnie Madikizela-Mandela funeral. Welcome back to Political Capital, your intersection of money and politics. I'm Karabole Tlhatlha. The eyes of the world were fixed on Soweto this weekend following the funeral service of late ANC struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, a ceremony which brought up a lot of talking points, among them her very own contested legacy, the settling of political scores, and what President Cyril Ramaphosa intends to do over his unfinished business with the Marikana massacre.
It is so disappointing to see how they withheld their words during my mother's lifetime, knowing very well what they would have meant to her. Only they know why they chose to share the truth with the world after she departed. I think their actions are actions of extreme cruelty, because they robbed my mother of her rightful legacy during her lifetime. It is little comfort to us that they have come out now. I was particularly angered by the former police commissioner George Fivers for cruelly only coming out with the truth after my mother's death. And to those of you who vilified my mother through books, on social media, and speeches, don't think for a minute that we've forgotten. The pain you inflicted on her lives on in us. Praising her now that she's gone shows what hypocrites you are. Why didn't you do the same of her male counterparts and remind the world of the many crimes they committed before they were called saints? Over the past week and a half, it's become clear that South Africa, and indeed the world, holds men and women to different standards of morality.
At your 80th birthday, you said you would take me and Julius Malema to Marikana to meet the widows of the departed miners. We could not go because you were not well. You are gone now. I am left to go alone. But I will be guided by your spirit. As you said, and I know that Julius Malema will go with me so that we can go and heal the wounds of the Marikana widows. On an organizational note, I am sorry, Mama, that your organization delayed in according you its honor. I am sorry that we delayed this much to this point and time and moment. As President of the African National Congress, I will be proposing to the National Executive Committee that the ANC should award you the highest honor of our movement and bestow on you isithwalandwe siaparankwe.
Some of those who sold out to the regime are here. And what is funny, Mama, is that they are crying the loudest, more than all of us who cared for you. Mama, the UDF cabal is here. The cabal that rejected you and disowned you and sent you to the brutal apartheid regime is here. When they called the press conference during the dark days of apartheid, when they called the press conference when the regime was prepared to kill and said in that press conference, you are not part of them, they are here today. Mama, why did the UDF call a press conference to disassociate themselves from you? Because you were never a member of UDF. You were a member of the ANC. You were the only one who was pronouncing ANC in the 80s. Why did the UDF see the need to disassociate themselves with a person who was not their member? Mama, you never told me how we must treat them when they come here. I'm waiting for a signal, ma. Mama, Nomzamo, Mama Nomzamo, all those who resigned from the NEC of the Women's League because they said they cannot be led by a criminal, they are here. Some of them are playing prominent roles in your funeral. In a funeral of a person they called a criminal. In a funeral of a person they were ready to humiliate in front of the whole world. They are here, man.
But last night, the African National Congress Women's League hurriedly called a press conference to address the legacy of a woman who was their president for over 10 years.
Let me say categorically The ANC does not believe that those allegations are true because the historical time factor is what was wrong in the first place. Number one, at the time that the NEC members resigned from the NEC of the ANC Women's League, there was no judgment against Comrade Winnie Mandela, number one. So none of them would have been able to say we are leaving because of the words that were used by a particular person on a platform. Rather, we will come back and discuss more the historical context of the time. But in brief, at the time, there was acrimony within the ANC Women's League. And it was felt by these women that it was best for them to resign at that moment to allow the ANC Women's League to continue with their work. In fact, when the NEC of the ANC wanted to disband the ANC, it is these very same women who had resigned who argued against that and argued for an ANC Women's League to exist and be in place under the leadership of Comrade Winnie Mandela. We don't believe that we should go into the detail right now. We think that that detracts from what we now know of a woman who unified all of us in a stadium yesterday, continues to unify us now, and whose legacy we want to protect and defend, as we need to protect and defend the leaders of the ANC against whom allegations were made, and we need to do those with concrete facts. The other issue here is we decided that it is the responsibility of the leadership of the ANC to defend its members, not for them to stand up each time there's an allegation and they need to come and defend themselves against spurious allegations that are not really tested in history or in fact.
That's it for this week's political economic news. We'll be back on your screens this Thursday at 6:30. Until then, take care.